The Snow Queen, written by Hans Christian Andersen, first published in 1844. This adaptation written and read by Kiwi Opa. Our story begins. Gerda was a little girl who lived with her grandma. Her BFF, best friend forever, Kay, lived next door. Between Gerda's house and Kay's, there was a small walkway. Gerda and Kay played there every day, played games, read books, and talked. They talked about getting married when they grew up. One winter's day, they were playing inside when Gerda's grandma cried, "Look! The Snow Queen is gathering her bees. See them swarm all around her?" Gerda and Kay rushed to the window. Often at midnight she flies through the streets of the town, Grandma continued. She looks in the windows. As she looks, the ice freezes into wonderful shapes, shapes like flowers and castles. If you warm pennies by the fire and hold them up to the frosted glass, the warm pennies create a peephole in the frost and you can look out. Kay pointed his nose to where the Snow Queen was and poked out his tongue. Later, on the roof, Gerda asked Kay, "Do you think she might come for us?" she said, frightened. "Okay, let her try," said Kay boldly. "I'll set her on the stove, and she'll melt away to a toasted marshmallow." Gerda shivered. "Don't say things like that." She rushed back inside, hoping the Snow Queen wasn't watching them. "I'm not afraid," said Kay. "I'll show her if she dares come near me." Then he climbed back through the window to his own room. That night, little Kay was getting ready for bed. Half undressed, he climbed on a chair by the window and peeped out. A snowflake grew larger and larger until it became the Snow Queen. Her dress looked like millions of starry snowflakes linked together. She was made of ice, shining and glittering. Her eyes sparkled like bright stars, but there was no peace, no rest in her glance. She was evil. She nodded towards the window and waved with her hand. The little boy was frightened and sprang from his chair. When he looked up, he saw the beautiful lady at the window. She held in her hand a plate of Turkish delights. Kay couldn't resist. He undid the catch and snatched a handful from the plate. As he shoved them greedily into his mouth, the lady grabbed his wrist and pulled him out of the window onto her sled. She flicked her whip and the horses started off. Now Kay should have been very frightened, but instead, with Turkish delight all around his mouth, he held out his hand for more. This wasn't any normal sweet. The Snow Queen had baked a powerful spell into the Turkish delight. It was addictive, like a drug. Those that ate it would become her slave forever. The Snow Queen's sled lifted off the ground. "Are you cold?" she asked in a kind voice. "May I have another sweet?" Kay replied. The Snow Queen smiled as her sled flew high over the houses and away up north. Kay had crept inside the Snow Queen's fur coat. She kissed him on the forehead. The kiss was colder than ice. It went straight to Kay's heart, and he thought he was going to die. If only she'd give me more Turkish delight, he thought, then I'd be warm. They arrived at the castle. The Snow Queen set a sled down in the snow-covered courtyard. She grasped Kay's little hand and dragged him up the stairs towards the great castle door. They were suddenly surrounded by thousands of fluttering snowflakes. But they didn't fall from the sky as normal snowflakes do. They poured out of the doors and windows. They were the Snow Queen's guards, and they were alive. The Snow Queen dragged Kay through a big hall, then down into the castle's dungeon. Little Kay was quite blue, almost black with cold, but he did not feel it. The Snow Queen kept feeding him Turkish delight. The next morning, when Gerda came to visit Kay, he wasn't there. She looked everywhere for him. She raced out the front door and down to the village square. "Have you seen Kay? Have you seen my friend?" she cried. But no one had seen him. She spoke to the flowers in the field. "He didn't pass this way." And she wept many tears. Nobody knew where he had gone. "He must be dead," she cried, and tears by the bucketful poured out of her eyes. She returned to her house so sad that her feet tripped over her bottom lip. She trudged up the stairs and climbed out the window. Going down on her knees, she began to pray. "Dear Lord, don't let my Kay be dead. Please, please, don't let my Kay be dead." "I don't believe he is," said a voice. Gerda looked up, and there in the garden sat a little sparrow. "When we're searching for food, we sit high on the rooftops. We see everything. We would have seen him unless he fell in the river." A tiny spark of hope lit up in Gerda's heart. "I'll go ask the river." She put on her new red shoes, her winter coat, her fur hat and gloves. "If he drowned, the river will know." "River, river," shouted Gerda to the fast-flowing water. "Did my Kay come by here? Did he fall in your deep waters and drown?" There was no answer. "Is it true that you have taken my little playmate away from me?" cried Gerda. "I will give you my red shoes if you will only give him back to me." She crept into a boat on the edge of the water, stood in the bow, and flung her red shoes that she loved so much into the river. "There," she said to the river, "now give me back my friend." Sad for Gerda, she didn't realize that the boat she stood in wasn't tied to the bank. Her movement rocked the boat loose. Away downstream she floated. She was frightened, but she didn't cry. She was determined to find Kay. The little boat floated on with the stream, getting faster and faster. Little Gerda sat quite still. Her red shoes floated beside the boat, but too far away for her to grab. Then Gerda saw a small cottage. It had strange red and blue windows, a thatched roof, 2 wooden soldiers standing guard at the door. An old lady came hobbling out. She was bent over and carrying a walking stick. She wore a large sun hat with all sorts of pretty flowers painted on it. The old woman walked to the edge of the river, caught the boat with a walking stick, and drew it into land. She lifted Gerda out. Although Gerda was afraid of this strange old woman, she was so glad to feel herself on dry ground again. "Come stroll with me, my pretty, through the garden and tell me, who you are. Gerda told her everything. "Have you seen my little Kay?" she asked. "No, but perhaps he might come by." The perfume of the flowers was so hypnotic. Gerda felt at peace and safe. They went inside. On the table stood a bowl of beautiful cherries. The little old lady told Gerda not to be sorrowful, but eat some cherries. Gerda was allowed to eat as many as she wanted. While Gerda was eating, the old woman combed out her long flaxen ringlets with a golden comb. As she combed, she whispered, "I have longed for a granddaughter like you." Gerda forgot about Kay, for the old woman was casting a spell on her. She wanted to keep Gerda as her own. For the rest of the day they returned to the flower garden. "How fragrant and beautiful it is," thought Gerda. Every flower that could be thought of, for every season of every year, was here in full bloom. Gerda jumped for joy and played till the sun went down. Then she slept in an elegant bed with red silk pillows embroidered with coloured violets. Lulled into a dreamlike state by the flowers, the cherries, the bed, and the old woman's spells, Gerda dreamt a happy dream with the old woman as her grandmother. "I will stay here forever," she murmured. But in the garden one day, Gerda noticed the roses. They reminded her of Kay. She asked of the roses, "Do you know where my dear friend Kay is? Is he dead?" "No," they answered. "We have been in the ground where all the dead lie. Your Kay is not there." "Kay is not dead! Kay is not dead!" The knowledge broke the old woman's spells. Gerda raced to the garden gate. It was locked, but the latch was rusty. She leant on it, and it gave way. She ran till she could run no longer. Then she sat on a great stone. It was then she realized the summer had passed. It was now autumn. Suddenly she heard the sound of a carriage. It stopped. "May we give you a lift?" Inside was a prince and a princess. They invited Gerda to stay in their castle for a few days. She told them her story. They said, "You must hurry." "You won't get very far without boots," said the prince. "And you'll go much faster with a carriage," exclaimed the princess. They not only gave her boots and a coach made of pure gold, but also a muff, a coachman, a footman, and riders all wearing golden crowns on their heads. The prince and the princess waved her off and wished her every success with her quest. The coach drove on through a thick forest where robbers waited. "It is gold! It is gold!" they shouted, and rushed forward, seizing the horses. During the battle, the coachman, the footman, and all the riders died. Little Gerda stepped bravely from the carriage. "She is fat and pretty, and she has been fed on nuts and honey," said the old robber woman. The woman had a long beard and eyebrows that hung over her eyes. "How nice she will taste," she cackled. "Ow!" screamed the old woman, springing in the air and jumping about. All the robbers laughed. Her ear had been bitten by her own daughter. "She shall play with me," said the little robber girl. "She shall give me her muff and her pretty dress and sleep with me in my bed." The little robber girl, who was about the same size as Gerda, wore a mournful look on her face. She clasped little Gerda round the waist and said, "They shall not kill you. I will protect you." I suppose you are a princess? She smiled at Gerda. No, Gerda replied. Gerda explained her story, how fond she was of little Kay, and how she must find him. After they ate and drank, they slept in a corner on straw and carpet. Above them, more than 100 pigeons, who pretended to be asleep, watched and listened to the little girls. "These all belong to me," said the robber girl proudly. "And here is my old sweetheart Bar." She dragged a reindeer out by the horn. "Why is he all tied up?" Gerda wanted to know. "To stop him running away." The little robber girl laughed. "I tickle his neck every night with my knife. It makes him look so funny." The robber girl had drawn her knife. Gerda looked at it in great fright. "Will you take that knife to bed?" "I always sleep with my knife," said the little robber girl. "You never know what might happen in the night. But now tell me again about little Kay and why you've come searching for him." Gerda was drifting off to sleep when one of the wood pigeons cooed. "We have seen little Kay." Gerda sat bolt upright. "Where?" "In the carriage of the Snow Queen. They drove through the woods while we were lying in our nest. She blew upon us, and all our young died." "Where were they going?" cried Gerda. "Lapland," said the reindeer. "A place you can leap and run about freely on sparkling ice plains. The Snow Queen has a castle there." "Kay, my little Kay," Gerda sighed. "Lie still," said the robber girl, "or I shall run you through with my knife." In the morning Gerda told the little robber girl what the wood pigeons had said. She looked serious, nodded her head. "I'll help you escape," she said. "Our men have gone. Mother is the only one here. At noon she drinks out of a great bottle, then falls asleep." When her mother was asleep, the little robber girl went to the reindeer, squinted her eyes and said, "I should very much like to tickle your neck a few more times with my knife, for it makes you look so funny." "But instead," she said affectionately, "I will untie your cord. You shall go to Lapland, where you can leap and run freely on the sparkling plains of ice. But you must make good use of your legs. Run fast. Carry this little maiden to the castle of the Snow Queen. Help her to find her Kay." The reindeer jumped for joy. The little robber girl lifted Gerda onto his back. "Here are 2 loaves and a ham so that you won't starve." Then the little robber girl gave Gerda a really, really big hug, cut the string holding the reindeer, and away they flew. The reindeer flew over stumps and stones, through the great forest, up snowy mountains, across flat plains. Wolves howled, ravens screamed. Above them, lights danced across the sky. "The northern lights," explained the reindeer. They stopped by a little hut where an old Lapland woman, by the light of an oil lamp, was cooking fish. After Bar and Gerda had told their stories, the Lapland woman said, "Oh, you poor dears, you still have a long, long way to go. The Snow Queen lives more than 100 miles further north. I have a friend who lives near the castle. She can give you more information than I. I have no paper, but I will write a few words on a piece of dried fish." Gerda accepted the message, and the pair set off for the Snow Queen's palace. They found the woman's hut. She lived in an igloo, which had no door. The entrance was so low, Gerda and Bar had to crawl in on their hands and knees. Outside was terribly cold, but inside was as hot as summer. The woman wore nothing but shorts and a t-shirt. She loosened little Gerda's dress and took off her fur boots and mittens. Otherwise Gerda might have melted like butter on hot toast. Then she placed a piece of ice on the reindeer's head. The woman read what was written on the dried fish. She read it 3 times until she knew it by heart. Then she popped the dried fish into her soup pot. She knew it was good to eat. She never wasted anything. "You are so clever," said the reindeer. "Can you give little Gerda something to make her stronger? Perhaps as strong as 12 men? She needs to overcome the Snow Queen." "The power of 12 men?" said the woman. "That would be of very little use." She looked at Gerda. "Dear, you have everything you need to overcome the Snow Queen. Your purity, your innocence of heart. Go with God, and the angels will protect you." 2 miles from here is the Snow Queen's castle. Stop by the large bush which stands in the snow, covered with red berries. Gerda and Bar rode on through the forest. Gerda felt the cold. "Oh, I have forgotten my boots and mittens," she cried. But the reindeer dared not stop. They were too close to the Snow Queen's palace. "She has guards. She can sense our presence." And he was afraid. He ran on until he reached the bush with the red berries. There he set Gerda down, kissed her with a sloppy wet kiss. Great bright tears trickled down his cheeks. "You must go on alone from here," he said. "I will be here when you come back. I will make sure you and your little friend, if you find him, get home safely." Gerda stood there, no shoes, no gloves, outside the tall ice walls of the Snow Queen's palace. Gerda was suddenly surrounded by thousands of snowflakes that fluttered about her. They didn't fall from the sky as normal snowflakes do, but poured out of the doors and windows of the castle. She suddenly realized they were alive. They were the Snow Queen's guards. Gerda prayed. The cold was so great she could see her own breath. It came like steam from her mouth. As she continued to pray, the steam appeared to increase until it took the shape of little angels. They all wore helmets and carried shields and spears. They grew in size the moment they touched the earth. By the time Gerda had finished her prayers, a whole legion stood around her. They thrust their spears into the terrifying snowflakes, who shattered into 100 pieces. The angels stroked her hands and feet. She felt warm, both inside and out. Warm, full of courage, feeling safe, Gerda hastened on to the Snow Queen's castle. Winds raged around her, cutting into her like a knife. But she offered up a prayer, and the winds sank down as if they were going to sleep. Little Gerda forced open the great castle door. Gerda found Kay deep in the castle beside a frozen lake. She flew to him, threw her arms around his neck, and held him fast. "Kay, dear little Kay, I have found you at last." Little Kay was quite blue with cold, indeed almost black, but he had become so addicted to the Turkish delight he no longer felt it. All this time the Snow Queen had fed him that sweet with a powerful spell. Gerda wept hot tears that fell on his breast and penetrated his heart. They melted the ice and washed away all desire that Kay had for Turkish delight. Warmth returned to his body. He recognized Gerda and cried joyfully, "Gerda, where have you been all this time?" They clung together, laughing and weeping for joy. Ba was waiting when the children got to the large bush covered with red berries. He knelt down in the snow. The two children climbed on his back. Away he flew, hoofs kicking up the snow as he went, the children holding on tightly. Ba took them to the river. The river was overjoyed when it saw Gerda had found her Kay. Happy they rowed home in the little boat and arrived just in time for supper. Grandma made them a steaming hot cup of chocolate, and they slept for 3 whole days.